Ready to move on. So we've gone through grade 3, which covered our prayers and our blessings. We've gone through grade 4, which was the 12 Pesukim. We've gone through grade 5, which were the mitzvot. We went through the 10 mitzvos, and we went 10 basic mitzvos, and we've gone through all the holidays. Today we start grade 6 or section 6 on page 139, which is the Jewish life cycle. So the Jewish life cycle it's an interesting topic because, one of the biggest things in life is that there are many people walking the face of the earth with no mission, no purpose, and no reason, no understanding of why they're here. When a person is born, it's God's way of saying, you matter. Up until now, the world was able to survive without you. And now that you're born, the world can't survive without you. And until the day you die, the world can't survive without you. And when a person dies, their mission is over. So in Judaism, every life cycle event from birth till death is meaningful. There's a reason of why we do things. And we're going to start today and go through the different stages in life and recognize not only its importance, not only the way a Jew celebrates, but also the value and the meaning to a person's life. So let's start off from the very beginning, which is birth. So birth is a very special time, right? Obviously, you look at a new baby being born, it's so precious, so pure. No one forgets that, right? That beginning pure stage. And every year on a person's birthday, we celebrate. And really, it's interesting. If you look at Hallmark, right? If you look at a lot of the birthday, I always have a hard time finding birthday cards I'm just going to close the door, in a typical grocery store because, thank you. The focus of a birthday, at least in the secular world, is focused on the person. We give gifts, which is important because we want to show how happy we are that the person was born and is in our lives. But for the person whose birthday it is, it's a day to reflect. It's like a mini Rosh Hashanah. It actually says that Rosh Hashanah is the birthday of the world. Our birthday is a Rosh Hashanah for us. It's a day to reflect. I'm a year older. Why am I here? What is my mission? I obviously have renewed strength, renewed purpose, renewed qualities, or new ones, that I didn't have the year before. So actually, the way a Jew celebrates their birthday is not just through a party, which is included, but through giving extra tzedakah, adding special prayers, writing what we call a cheshbon hanefesh, thinking about our past year, evaluating our relationships, our mitzvahs. We take upon a new mitzvah, what's called in Hebrew a hachlata. Hachlata means a new resolution. These are all part of a birthday. And not only that, we also have the power to bless because it says that on a person's birthday, their mazel, their luck is strong. So on a person's birthday, you have the power to bless. By the way, we're talking specifically here about a Jewish birthday. What happens on a Jewish birthday is it's a little confusing because it falls out every year differently than on your English birthday because the calendars don't always line up, right? So one year your Hebrew birthday will fall out in October 11th, and next year it'll fall out on October 16th. Sometimes it could be up to 3 weeks apart from the actual day of your English and your Hebrew birthday. Very, very important to know your Hebrew birthday and to celebrate it properly. Okay, so that's in regards to birthdays. Now that let's talk about So a person's born, right? What's the very first thing parents give to their children when they're born? They give them life, that's for sure. A name. So let's talk for a moment about a name. A name, we're talking about a Jewish name, right? We're in Hebrew school. A Jewish name is very powerful. The letters of a person's name are their energy and their life force, and they're connected to them. It's actually amazing, and I found this, it says that the night before you give the child the name, and we'll talk about how a boy and a girl are named differently, the parents have Ruach HaKodesh, divine inspiration, and you know which name to give. It's actually interesting. I think of my own children. I like certain children I would have given a different name to, but I ended up giving it to the next child. And that name is so appropriate for that kid, and that name is so appropriate for that child. And it's amazing. I literally could have given different names, but I knew I was, through this divine inspiration that each parent is gifted, what that name should be. People are very connected to their names. I'm sure you've seen this in your own life. People who you're named after, a lot of times have certain similarities. The whole idea of a name also is that, like in Jewish tradition, if somebody is ill, many times you will add a name, like the name Chaim, which means life, or Chaya. So people who have been sick, many times they'll add a name to draw down healing energy, because your Jewish name is very, very, very important, and you should know your Jewish name. And when you use your Jewish name, you're always bringing down the energy of your name. Like we spoke about earlier when we were in grade 3, we were talking about the Hebrew letters and how each letter represents something else. In the Jewish tradition, the Hebrew letters are not just a letter, but you can study the Kabbalah of each letter. Like if you look at the letter Aleph, has the little yud on top, the little yud on the bottom, the line in the middle represents Hashem and the Jewish people, and the Torah that combines, that unites them. Every letter has so much meaning. So your Jewish name has a tremendous amount of meaning and value. And it's not just a name that you were given at birth, but it's a name that you should use, because your name gives you energy. Just like when a person faints, what's the first thing people do? They call them by name, naturally. Why? Because you're connected to your name. Your Jewish name is connected to your soul. Your name is not just a name for you, it's the name of your soul. It's the name of your neshama. Your neshama is connected to your name. So a Jewish name is a very, very special thing. If you don't have a Jewish name, it's not too late. You can still get one. If you have one and you don't use it, consider using it. There's a lot of meaning to it. A girl gets her Jewish name at the first available time that the Torah is read. Her father, it doesn't have to be her father, but generally a father is called up to the Torah and gives the name to the child. When do Jewish people read the Torah? When do Jewish people read the Torah? Shabbat, but there's twice. What are they? On holidays, but when else? Do you know that we read the right? But a bar mitzvah, we only celebrate the bar mitzvah Torah reading on a day that we read the Torah. You can't read the Torah for the bar mitzvah. It's the opposite. You have to schedule the reading of the Torah on the day that we read the Torah. We only read the Torah 3 times a week. Every Monday, every Thursday, and every Shabbos. On Shabbos, we read the whole Torah portion. On Monday, we read a little bit, and on Thursday, we read a little bit. Did you know that? Yes, because one day there is minyan every morning. You can come. And on Monday and Thursday, they read some Torah. So if you were born on a Sunday, you give the name on Monday. If you were born on a Tuesday, you give the name on Thursday. If you were born on Friday, you give the name on Shabbos. Just that you do it at the first available time for a girl. A boy, the Jewish name is given when? At the bris. That is correct. My sister just had her first boy after 8 girls. Yes, I know. It's amazing. The bris is tomorrow. I know. It's amazing. She lives in New York. We call him the prince. We say he doesn't need a name. He's adorable. So
He's gonna be so spoiled.
Oh my God! Trust me, he already. I don't feel like I've ever. I have, thank God, tens of nieces and nephews, but I feel like I just became an aunt. It's like, oh, it's amazing. You have to. It's amazing. We're so excited. Um, so it's also fun to watch a seasoned mother have a boy. It's like a whole nother experience. Yeah, amazing. So, um, so I'm thinking about a bris. That's what we're all planning the bris together. Anyways, so a bris is a circumcision. Every Jewish boy needs to be circumcised at 8 days old. Who was circumcised at 8 days old? Right. No. Who was the first person that had a? Who was the first person that had a bris? Avram, but he wasn't 8 days old. How old was he? That is correct. Aaron was 99 years old. And when he had his bris, why did Hashem command him to have a bris milah? The bris is a sign on the body, an irrevocable bond. I am Jewish. I am a child of Hashem. And the whole concept of a bris is very spiritual, and there's a lot of different explanations given why people sitting in here we're in Russia, know how difficult it was in communist Russia to give a bris, yet people who were completely secular and non-Torah observant risked their lives just to give their children a bris. A bris has always been, am I right? A bris has always been something that people have known throughout the generations that this is non-compromisable. And there's many different things about a bris that one can study and learn. But what I want to bring up today is that a bris is the very first commandment that Hashem gave to Avram. And Avram passed with flying colors. The first person that did it at 8 days old was his son Yitzchak, Isaac. Yitzchak was the first one at 8 days old. And this is, as I said before, a sign of an everlasting bond that Hashem has with the Jewish people. Oh, sorry. Also, there is a whole idea that through making a mark on the physical, it connects the child to something spiritual. Girls and women don't need a bris because it says almost a woman is already born circumcised, not physically, but her spiritual level is in a place where she doesn't need to have that mark. Because it explains in Kabbalah that a woman's soul stems from a higher place than a man, just the way Hashem created it. So and that's why there's a lot of things that women in general don't have an obligation to do, don't need reminders, like we spoke about last week with the tefillin and the minyan. Women naturally have that spiritual. The naming also is earlier. The bat mitzvah is earlier. There's a lot of things that women and men differ in because of the nature of where the source of the woman's soul. So it's not a better or a worse, it's just different. Liba, you have a question?
Yeah, so how about Ishmael? He was not circumcised? Didn't get circumcised?
I believe he was.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
why the all our
Yeah.
brothers.
Yeah. Yeah.
And cousins.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, and what's happened to the piece of body after circumcision? Where it goes? I never heard about it.
Interesting. No, it's an interesting question. I don't know. I would imagine it's buried.
Yeah, there should be some.
Yeah, it's an interesting question. I'll find out. No, it's an interesting question. So that concept of circumcision this is what's called a brit milah. A bris means an everlasting bond, and at that time, a boy is given his Jewish name. Okay, so also another thing that happens is, and I think I explained this in another class, but I want to explain it again. There's something called your Jewish, if you're Jewish, comes from your mother. If your father is Jewish, but your mother's not Jewish, you're 100% not Jewish. If your mother's Jewish and your father's not Jewish, you're 100% Jewish. It's number one. Then there's something called something that we get from the Father, and that is what's known as the Kohen, the Levi, and the Yisrael. I think at one point we spoke about the 12 tribes, right? Let me give you a 10-second history. The very first Jew was Avraham. His wife was Sarah. Together they had Yitzchak, Isaac, and he married Rivka. Together they had the twin sons. What was their name? Yaakov, Jacob, and Esau. Yaakov and Esau. Yaakov married Rachel and Leah, Rachel and Leah, and together they had the 12 tribes. We all stem from the 12 tribes. Every one of us stems from either Reuven, Shimon, you know it? Say it with me. Levi, Yehuda, Yisachar, Zevulun, Dan, Naphtali, Gad, Asher, Yosef, Binyamin. Those are the 12 tribes. I think I'm going to make us sing it every week. It's the same tune as the months of the year. Reuven, Shimon, Levi. Okay, we'll do it next week. Anyways, no, it's good to know. So the 12, we each stem from the 12 tribes. Most of us don't know which tribe we come from, except many people know if they come from Yehuda. It says that, well, a lot of the kings in Jewish history came from Yehuda, and Mashiach will come from Yehuda. The one tribe that for sure know where you come from is the tribe of, who said? Levi, the Levites. Because Levi was married, this is a little hard, I wish I had a board, maybe next. Levi, if you get it good, if not, don't worry about it. Levi had 4 children. Who were his 4 children? Gershon, Kahas, Merari, and Yocheved. That's their name. They don't have English names in those days. Yocheved, the girl, who did she have? Oh, come on. Who? Very good. How come everyone knows the mother of, Jesus, but no one knows the mother of Moses? Moshe's mother was Yocheved. Moshe, not just Moshe, she had 3 children. She had Moshe, Moses, who was the brother. Miriam was the sister, and Aaron. Very good. Aaron, so we're talking here the grandson of Levi, right? I started off with the tribe. Levi, Yocheved, Aaron. Aaron was the very first high priest. In the Mishkan, in the tabernacle, he was the one who was the Kohen Gadol. And everyone who descends from Aaron is a Kohen. Raise your hand here if you're a Kohen. Raise your hand here if your father was a Kohen. Raise your hand if your grandfather was a Kohen. Mine also. My grandfather was my mother-in-law's father and my mother's father were both Kohanim. However, once they got married, it goes according to the father. So I didn't inherit the Kohanim, being a Kohen, from my mother, because once you get married, it goes according to the father. So everyone who's a Kohen serves in the temple. Anyone who served in the temple that did what was called the job, they sung, all the singing descended from Moshe. And many kings descended from Miriam. So the 3 children of Yocheved, or the 3 grandchildren of Levi, they sort of a certain role they fulfilled. Aaron was the Kohen. All Kohanim come from Aaron. Moshe was the Levites. All Leviim come from Moshe, and a lot of kings come from Miriam. The rest of us who come from Reuven, Shimon, not Levi, Yehuda, Yisachar, Zebulun, Dan, Naphtali, Gad, Asher, Yosef, Binyamin, we're called Yisrael. We're just Jews. Most people are Yisrael. If you are a Kohen, you have a certain privilege. And if you have a certain privilege as a Kohen, you have certain, first of all, when God willing, when Mashiach comes and the temple will be rebuilt, you will serve in the temple, just like the Kohanim did. If you're a Levi, you will also. I don't know if you'll notice, but many times when the Torah is read, the rabbi will always say, is there anyone here who's a Kohen? He gets the first Aliyah. Anyone here who's a Levi? He gets the second Aliyah. And then he continues to give. Aliyah is when you're called up to the Torah. So there's certain privileges. It's a very big privilege to be a Kohen. My mother's father, my grandfather, who Mordechai is named after, he was known as the Rebbe's Kohen. The Rebbe used to give, like on Purim, he used to give Shalach Manas to a Kohen, a Levi in Israel. He gave it to my grandfather. He was it was like a special honor to be a Kohen. Also, a Kohen blesses the Jewish people on the holidays. When we put the talis over the head and they say Yivarechecha, it's a special priestly blessing that was done in the temple. That's a tradition we still do today. So there's many special things about being a Kohen. So at a bris, you also get your title. Are you a Kohen? Are you a Levi? Or are you Yisrael? Depending on which tribe you come from. So, okay. So you don't know where you come from. We don't have a tracking. Very few people know where they come from, but Kohanim know where they come from. They're the only ones who know. And how do they know? What is it? Because their father told them. It's like the joke of Mr. Somebody who comes to the rabbi and says, Rabbi, I want to be a Kohen. He says, I'm sorry, you can't. He says, I'll pay you $1,000. Make me a Kohen. He says, you can't. It's not possible. He said, I'll give you $100,000. He says, sir, I cannot make you a Kohen. It doesn't work this way. He says, tell me. The rabbi says, why do you want to be a Kohen so badly? He says, my father was a Kohen. So, a Kohen comes from your father tells you that you're a Kohen. Some people don't know. But at some point, Judaism has been a little bit secularized in the past couple of years, but 100 years maybe. But 100 years back, you for sure knew if you were a Kohen because most Jews were observant. It only started, 100, 200 years ago where people started losing their faith, being less involved. I mean, everyone here, I'm sure, could go back not so long ago and, you have a parent, a grandparent, a great-grandparent was a rabbi, was a sheikhet, was a chazan, was something. It was in the family. So people knew where they came from. Okay, so true or false? What is it? Sorry?
If a man marries a woman who's not Jewish,
Yes.
and he is a Kohen, and she obviously is not.
Yes.
She's not Jewish, so that child will never be a Kohen.
Correct.
What if?
It's actually kind of sad.
Very sad. What if?
And what about the opposite? What if the father's Jewish and the child's not Jewish? It's a terrible thing.
What if the child? That's another horrible thing. But
yeah.
What if the child chooses to convert because they really do feel that they have been
for whatever reason? Are they a Kohen? Very interesting question. I don't know the answer. I would say that they're not a Kohen. You know what? I don't know. It's an excellent question. The reason I say I don't know is because when someone converts, they sort of lose a connection to their parents on a spiritual level. Because they have a new identity. It's like a rebirth. Interesting. I don't know the answer to that, but I can find out. Yeah. Yeah. It's an interesting question. I don't know the answer. Number 1, our birthdays are a special time to give extra tzedakah. True or false? True. Our birthdays are a special time to give extra tzedakah. No, it's not false. Our birthdays are a special time to give extra tzedakah. Number 2, girls get their Jewish names by the Torah reading. That is true. Girls get their Jewish names by the Torah reading. Okay. Our Hebrew birthdays are always on the same date as our legal birthdays. That is false. Our Hebrew birthdays is dependent on the Jewish calendar. All right, number 4. All Jews have the title of Kohen. No, it's not true, as your title depends on which tribe you are from. All right. So now, we spoke about the bris. Oh, the bris is also performed by a mohel. Very, very, very important. A mohel is not a doctor, and a doctor is not a mohel. Even if a doctor knows how to perform a circumcision, you need to go through a mohel. Because a mohel has the spiritual element that a doctor does not have. When choosing a mohel, you always choose someone who has yiras shamayim, fear of heaven, someone who is a person that you respect, because really it's the obligation of the father to circumcise the child. Most fathers choose not to and give over that responsibility to the mohel. The mohel is a representative to your family. So choosing your mohel, sorry? Yes, he's a rabbi.
Often it's already done by the doctor, so how to go second time?
No, you can't. But no, it's by the way, there is, I believe there is, yes, interesting question.
They have to go.
Yes, because the mohel, yes. Also, I believe on a physical level, there's slightly different, how they do this procedure. But there's certain, also the blessings that come through with the circumcision, and the whole, in general, the whole experience is a whole different experience. When I had my son Levi, my first boy, um, my doctor, I told him that we wanted a circumcision. The pediatrician, he was very interested. He actually came to his bris. I couldn't believe it. He's a very busy guy. He said, I'm curious to see a rabbi performing like, he knows my husband's a rabbi, but he just didn't see the connection. And he came to me after the bris. He said he's never seen anything so unbelievable. He was shocked how professional and yeah, everything perfectly. Baby hardly cried, cried for a few seconds, and they give a little wine. But he was very, very impressed by it. So never to be afraid if a mole is the right way to have a bris. Okay, then there's something called a pidyon haben. No, only if you're a trained mohel. I don't think I'd let my husband do the bris. But no, most fathers, it's the obligation of the father to have the bris done for the child, and 99% of fathers give it over to a mohel. But it's actually like I believe the mohel has to like publicly ask, do you give me permission to circumcise your son? Because it's really the father's obligation, the father's mitzvah. Absolutely, yeah, yes.
Just two quick comments. One, Hashem knows your name. That's really important. It's like what they call Jacob. He knows your name.
What do you mean?
Hashem knows your name, your Hebrew name.
What do you mean? Hashem knows everything.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
A lot of people don't understand it. The other thing is, in the records, okay, in the genealogy records, it says who your loyal is.
Oh, really? Interesting. Yeah. Very
birth
interesting.
Records, even civil records, it'll have witnesses, but it also has
Who the mother is. In general, it's very interesting, the whole like legal documents, because we don't give our child a name till the bris. So when you leave the hospital with the baby, just an interesting FYI, usually you leave with the birth certificate. It's very complicating once you leave the hospital to do the birth certificate. Much easier to do it in the hospital. But the joke is, every time I have a boy, they're like, oh, that's the baby boy without the cert. Like, well, the whole hospital knows that's the kid who's walking out without a birth certificate. Obviously, we do it right after the bris. But I always feel like I don't want to do it before, even though I think I know what the name is going to be, because, that energy comes on that day. Every day is a day. So it's interesting. So what's a pidyon haben? The word, first of all, did you ever hear of it? No, okay. So the word pidyon haben, it's not a very well-known mitzvah because it's not such a common mitzvah. The word pidyon means redemption. Ben is son. The redemption of the firstborn. What's this story? So it's, first of all, so obviously if you've never heard of it, you've never been to one. Have you been? Oh, it's Moshe and Terry, that's right. So it's a special ceremony where the firstborn son is redeemed. What is redeemed? Like, why do they have to be redeemed? So we know that the 10th plague in Egypt, the firstborns were killed. The firstborn Jewish kids were not killed. They could have been killed because all firstborns across the country were killed. So as a sign of gratitude to Hashem that their lives were saved, the firstborns belong to Hashem, which means that they really belong to serve in the temple because they have that obligation, that gratitude back to Hashem that their lives were saved. By the sin of the golden calf, that right was taken away from them and was given over to the Levites and the Kohanim. But essentially, the firstborns belong to the Kohen because the Kohens are the representatives of Hashem since they work in the temple. So in order for a firstborn, a boy, to continue his life, he has to be redeemed from the Kohen. What does that mean? The redemption, for those of Suzanne witnessed it with Moshe and Terry, what type of boy? Every boy? So there's certain qualifications, and that's why you may not have heard this mitzvah before. First of all, it has to be, the boy has to be the oldest. So for example, in my case, Levi was my third. So he doesn't get a pidyon of ben. He has to be the oldest child. Second of all, both the parents have to be a Yisrael. Not a Kohen, not a Levi. A Yisrael. And both have to be. So to find someone who both the parents are Yisrael, it's the oldest child. And there's different qualifications of what type of firstborn this has to be. And what the ceremony basically is the Kohen asks the father, would you prefer the baby, or do you want to pay me and I'll redeem the baby? It's a very interesting ceremony. You actually use 5 silver coins. You dress the baby in a lot of jewelry and a lot of silver and gold. And it happens when it's 30 days. And when the Bechar, or the firstborn, is 30 days old, the parents redeem him from a Kohen. So you have to have someone who's a Kohen. And the Kohen redeems him with the 5 coins, and the parents pay the Kohen 5 silver coins, and then we celebrate it with a special meal. It's a beautiful. He buys him back, and it's a good message. What's more important, the money or the kid? It's good they don't do it when they're teenagers. What do you prefer? What is it?
You have to buy silver coins from special.
Yeah, there's a way to. Yeah, silver dollars. You can find it. It's a beautiful ceremony. I've been to a pidyon ben not many times, a few times in my life, and it's just this beautiful tradition that teaches us the value of how essentially everything belongs to Hashem, and a show of gratitude that we owe Hashem. Firstborn children could have been killed, and they weren't. So it's a beautiful symbolism on a deeper level of a concept within Judaism. And okay, that's when you're 30 days old. So we spoke about when you're born, you get your name. If you're a boy, you have a bris. And then's the 3-year-old next milestone. So the milestone is called the upsharnish. Raise your hand if you've been to an upsharnish. What does upsharnish mean? It's a Yiddish word for upsharin, to cut. We were there. Yes, that is correct. That was amazing. So what is an upsharnish? So we know that an upsharnish is a time where on the third, there's many different reasons why, but we let the child's hair grow. We don't cut their hair until they're the age of 3. And what is that compared to? We know that in Jewish tradition, a tree, you're not allowed to take from the tree until the fruits are 3 years old. You're not allowed to, until 3 years old, you're not allowed to take from the tree. So a child's education begins at age 3. That's when the Torah deems a child to a place of understanding that they can start to understand. So what happens at an upsharnish, for a girl, they begin the lighting of the Shabbos candles, because the very first Jewish, Sarah lit her Shabbos candles, but Rivka, the second of the matriarchs, she began at the age of 3. So Jewish girls around the world begin at the age of 3. For a boy, they get their hair cut. Now it's interesting. First of all, they begin to wear the yarmulke and the tzitzis. Again, they come to that age of understanding. The yarmulke, like we spoke about last week, is that remembrance that Hashem is always above them. The tzitzis, remember Rabbi showed you the knots, the 4 different corners of the world, Hashem is all over, and what those represent as mitzvahs. Another thing that a boy gets at his upsharnish is the payas, the side locks. Payas, there's many different traditions, different Hasidic sects, different groups that have different lengths of payas. Like you've seen some who have like long, right? Chabad keeps them very short. Different minhagim, different customs. But the concept of a payas is that the pagans, idol worshippers, used to grow their hair in a certain way that we differentiate from idol worshiping, and that is where payas, the whole idea of payas began. Jews throughout history, in the Holocaust, where Nazis taunted them, what was the first thing they wanted to do? Was cut off their payas, or to take off their beards, or to sort of speak like, you're just like the rest of us, to demonize them and to taunt them. You know, I'm sure you've seen documentaries of these terrible stories where people wanted to cut off their payas because that was like symbolic of like reducing them as a Jew. And there are people, Jews, who have fought throughout thick and thin throughout history to keep their payas because it represented a certain separation as a Jew. It's like, this is the way a Jew is. And it's just a very interesting custom that, not custom, it's an interesting mitzvah actually. It's a mitzvah to have payas, not a custom. The mitzvah to actually have payas. And it's interesting that anti-Semitism throughout history chose to pick on that. Like, seriously, you care like what length my hair is? Like, it's interesting that they knew the small things that represented bigger things. It's interesting what they chose to pick on, but you'll see, unfortunately, how that was something that was very common. So by an upturn, as I said, there's the yarmulke, there's the tzitzis, and it's really 3 years old for a girl and a boy is really that next stage of education. At 3 years old is when a child actually starts to absorb and to learn, and you can teach so much. Okay. We're not going to do that because we're pressed for time. Hold on a second. Okay. Next is
I think we're already in grade 7.
almost. Still in grade 6. All right. What's the next milestone for bar and bat mitzvah? So bar and bat mitzvah is interesting. Many people think that they have to have a bar or bat mitzvah. I never had a bar mitzvah. I never had a bat mitzvah. That is an incorrect statement. A bar or bat mitzvah is not something you have. It is something you become. Whether you have it a party or you didn't have a celebration, you become a bar or bat mitzvah. What does bar or bat mean? Bar is son, bat is daughter. You become the daughter or the son of a mitzvah. So what is that? When a girl turns, so here's something interesting that many people don't know. When a child is born, their soul descends from on high, and their body meet. Welcome to life. Now they were very happy, the soul up there. They were close to Hashem. Nobody bothered them. They loved mitzvahs. They couldn't do it, but they loved the concept. They know and appreciate what a mitzvah is. And then they come into this body. And to a certain degree, the body is trapping the soul because the soul has desires. And the body says, maybe not. So the body and the soul, the goal, and Hasidic philosophy and Kabbalah teaches us that the goal is that the body and the soul work together. Because what the body and the soul could accomplish, no soul up in heaven can accomplish. The soul, while it's lofty and spiritual, it has no hands, it has no feet, it can't do any mitzvahs, it can't make a difference. But a soul and a body is the ultimate. We're going off topic. But my point is that when a child is born, the body and the soul meet. When they receive their Jewish name, the soul and the body fuse a little bit more together. By bar bat mitzvah, they completely unite. So what happens is, up until the age of 12 or 13, we start chinuch, education, from a very young age, even from when the child is right away born. We surround it with mitzvahs and Jewish objects and spirituality, the home, etc. And we teach a child from when they're very young, like we just spoke about the upshurners, right? The little girl, like the candles, we started from very young. But they don't have an obligation because they don't have that sense of responsibility. What happens at 12 or 13, respectively for a girl and a boy, is that their body and their soul are fused together in a way that they can make their own choices. You tell a 12-year-old child, a girl, a 13-year-old boy, you can have a little restraint to not hurt your brother. An 11-year-old, no, you don't have the same. but it's true. There's a certain spiritual capacity that happens to a child, for a girl at 12 and a boy at 13, that what happens spiritually is that their soul and their body unite in a way that they're completely fused together. Up until now, they're like molding. But by bar and bat mitzvah, they actually become one entity. So now they're in full control of their capacity. They're in full control of their powers. They have the godly soul, they have the animal soul, they have the arguments, they have the choices, but they have the ability to make those choices. Correct. So different celebrations are done in different ways. For a boy, he begins the mitzvah of putting on tefillin, because until then he didn't have the obligation, but then he's able to start that at the age of 13. For a girl, she has different obligations that she starts to do, mitzvahs that are pertaining to her. But in either case, it's a cause for major celebration, because what you're basically telling the child, and this is such a Jewish way, it's bar and bat mitzvah is not a graduation of Hebrew school. It's the beginning. It's very unfortunate that in many synagogues and temples around the world, and I'm sure some of you have had that experience yourselves, where you went to Hebrew school, you had a Jewish education, and then bar and bat mitzvah, you were done. It was a graduation. It's like the joke Rabbi likes to say about the priest and the rabbi who meet for coffee, and the priest says, "I have a terrible problem with mice. What should I do? It keeps coming back. We tried mouse traps and everything." And the rabbi says, "Oh, I had the same problem, but I had an amazing idea. They got it away." He says, "What happened?" He says, "I called up all the mice one day to the bima. I bar mitzvahed them, and they never came back." So this is the sad truth of, of reality. Another story that I like, that I've heard. It's a little bit of a sad story, but there was a family that was very close to this rabbi, and they, by his bar mitzvah, they made a blessing on a Kiddush cup of some sort. They had a beautiful silver Kiddush cup that belonged to the family. The rabbi made the blessing, and the bar mitzvah was over. And after the bar mitzvah, the family could not find the Kiddush cup, and they thought that the rabbi had taken it, and they were very upset because this was a family rabbi, somebody that they trusted, and they weren't comfortable going and accusing the rabbi, you stole our Kiddush cup. But, they couldn't find it. And in this boy, he had a very, like a sour taste in his mouth towards Judaism and towards the rabbi. Like, a rabbi goes and steals a cup, and he just had this like negative association. And it came time for him to get married. He wasn't sure what to do. Like, on the one hand, he wanted the rabbi to marry them, but he had this like, negative feeling towards the rabbi. So he decided, one day the rabbi called him in very warmly. "How are you?" Started to talk. And he says, "Rabbi, I really want, I just feel like I need to communicate before I get married how I feel." And he tells him the story of what happened. After the bar mitzvah, you made the Kiddush, and we couldn't find the cup. And the rabbi looks at him, he says, "I put the cup in your tefillin bag." Sad story. The boy never opened up the tefillin bag again. So unfortunately, it's a sad story, but it's sometimes true that we take the lessons and we move forward, and we don't take those valuable educational, foundational lessons for life. So yeah, that's the story. So bar bat mitzvah, it's an opportunity for children, and especially parents, to really encourage our children to make those steps in their life to now it's beginning. It's not a graduation, it's not an end, it's only a beginning to more and more growth and depth.